Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly shir in the Zohar HaKadosh. And in this week's Parsha, Parsha's Tetzaveh, we encounter a fundamental piece of the Zohar with regards to a human emotion, a human condition. And it's fundamental because it sheds light on the pillar of the Zohar HaKadosh itself, which is the secret of the Tzadik Yisod Olam, the secret of Amech Kulam Tzadikim, and especially the secret of Tzadik Yisod Olam, the fact that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the central pillar, the B'tzina Kadisha, rests at the center of the Chavraya, connecting all of the disparate neshamos together towards a singular goal, to the degree that Rabbi Shimon is able to say, B'chad katirna aktarina, that with one singular bond of flame and connectivity, I connected to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not just Rabbi Shimon that he's saying that about, it's every ounce of the Zohar Kadosh that Rabbi Shimon is able to say it about the Chavraya, about the wandering travelers, about the donkey drivers, about the birds that are chirping, about the trees. Each and every aspect of the universe of the Zohar Kadosh is illuminated in the central connectivity of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Shechina HaKadosha, the secret of Tzadik Yisod Olam, the secret of Kutshabricha V'Shchinte, the secret that there is a pillar upon which all things in this world stand, the Tzadik, Kimitzion Tetzei Torah, that place of Butzina Kadisha, that placement of Rabbi Shimon at the center, the fact that Rabbi Shimon is not better or worse than anybody else, it's different. The tzaddik is Yored Min Hashamayim, as the Balatanya is Masbir, and as the Rebbe is Masbir very clearly about what the role of the tzaddik is in his mimer, or Zerul Tzaddik. The Tzaddik is the Shliach Tzibor. The Tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, rests at the center as the pillar that takes all of the drashos and sends them back upwards to the place that they need to come. Through the refinement of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's Torah, through the Zichuch of the Moichin, the Hashras HaMoichin of Moshe Rabbeinu, within Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the words of the Chavaya are able to take on deep significance, that they stop being Almin Deshav, as we spoke about in the Hakdama to the Zohar, and they start being Rakian B'Shemayim, that the words of the Chavraya build new realities, and they build new realities because their words are rooted in Torah's Moshe, which is the Nitzitz of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. With the Hiskashras to the Shorish of the Torah of the Tzaddik, as Rabbi Nachman says, there's a Birur Hamadama, there's a clarification of the imagination of the individual to the degree that their thoughts in Torah can be considered as if they're authentic to some degree or another. And Rabbi Nassan says, thankfully, Rabbi Nachman already gave us a Medama Mezacha, a purified madama. Now, clearly, that's only true for Rabbi Nassan, who in Likutei Halachos is this exact thing. It's a secret of the entire Zohar Kadosh. It's the back and forth. But over here, Rabbi Nassan is the entire Chavraya Kadisha. There's no 10 people here. It's just Rabbi Nassan bouncing ideas back off one another. Nobody like Rabbi Nassan in Likutei Halachos. Nobody like the tzaddik in Likutei Halachos has the ability to deviate from one point to the other, yet always maintaining the singular thread of connectivity and unity at the heart of the sugya. And this secret of the disparate voices, the disparate moments and experience that find unification in a shliach tzibor, in a koyach that's greater than the self, that can return it back to the true power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by giving it over to the tzaddik, by aligning oneself to the tzaddik, to the das of Moshe, what they do is they allow their words to illuminate. And this is the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu, who brings the Torah down to Klal Yisrael. It's the secret of the Kohen Gadol. It's the secret of the Kohen Gadol who's able to go lefnayu lefnim. Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai is the Torah Shebechsav, and the Kohen Gadol and the Kodesh HaKadoshim is the Torah Shebal Peh of Revelation. And both of those elements are Gilui of the Tzadikim. One is the aspect of Moshe, one is the aspect of Aharon. One is the aspect of Beis Shammai, one is the aspect of Beis Hillel. Because Hu Yelo Lepeh is Hillel, that's Aaron HaKohen, he's going to be the mouth for Moshe. And Lo Ishtavar Manochi is Shosei Tevos Shammai, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the Das of Beis Shammai. Chasadim and Gvuros, the two expressions of the Tzaddik. Matan Torah and Kodesh HaKadoshim. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai expresses both of these elements in the heart of the Zohar. And the Zohar is like each and every person's life, that we have many, many disparate moments in our lives, disparate things, different feelings, different fears, different assumptions, different perceptions, different thoughts, different attitudes, different emotional responses, different contemplations, different desires, different expectations. And all of them seem to be moving one against the other, one without connectivity, devoid of an inner central point of connectivity. But ultimately, with the light of the tzaddik, with the light of the tzaddik Yisod Olam, with the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, with the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, with the light of the B'tzina Kadisha, of all of the Yechidei Hadoros, what happens is that there's a central point towards which all separation unifies itself. It doesn't mean that all separation unifies. It means that separation is unified in orientation to a center. Tzaddik Yisod Olam. There's a Yisod, there's an Iker. As the Tikkun Zohar says, that the midah of Yesod is the midah of the Rakia that causes separation and specificity, but don't read it as Rakia, but rearrange its letters and find Iker, its essentiality. The point of essentiality of the Tzaddik, of Rashbi, of Moshe Rabbeinu, The das of all of the tzaddikim allows all of the various and separate things to unify together to reveal a beautiful image that comes out of the riboy of colors, a unity that comes out of the changes of a person's experience. Reliance upon a tzaddik is like we say in the bracha of al tzaddikim, that mishan muftach tzaddikim. There's a comfort that can be found in placing the rest of one's soul, the comfort of one's soul, in some place bigger than me, of giving it over to something bigger than me, of giving it over to somebody who knows better than me, of the ability to receive advice, of the ability to assume that we're not the most essential thing in existence. And that ability of being makasha our words to the tzaddik, of being makasha our words to the innermost point of the kodesh hakadashim, of the kohen gadol, is what is going to allow us to encounter the true power of the Zohar Kadosh. Because in truth, the Zohar Kadosh is a book that is filled with infinite variations of drasha. But the singular, most significant point of the Zohar is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The drashos are preceded by a connection to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they're followed by a connection to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the entire Torah itself is a connection to the Tzaddik and what they heard from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The Idrizuta is the epic end of the Zohar Kadosh, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gives life to his Talmidim, where it says, Chai La'olam, that Chai Olamim, that's a life, it's an eternal life. Chayim ad olam, it's an eternal life, it's a life that drips down from the highest of places. The tzaddik is nothing, the tzaddik is empty, the tzaddik is invisible, the tzaddik is translucent because there's a refinement to the degree that human beings are capable of refining themselves, so it just becomes a place or a conduit for an expression of Shekhinah HaKadosh. It's not the person, it's not the identity, it's not the individual, it's not the name, it's not the proper noun, God forbid. They're no different than any other human being. Nishmas Yisrael is Nishmas Yisrael. The Iker is the bittul, and the bittul of the tzaddik means that there's a makom of Hashras Hashchina there that's unlike anything else. And by mechuber ourselves to that innermost point, to the heart of the Zohar, all of the various thoughts of the Zohar remain connected. And now, in order to connect to this Nikud of the tzaddik, in order to connect to the Kohen Gadol of Parshas Tetzaveh, of Ketores, of Lifnayu Lifnim Mamish, of Menorah, of Big Day Zahav, the Big Day Kahuna, of the tzitz, of the urim v'tumim, all of the kochos of the tzaddik emes and tzaddikei amitim who have the koyach of the kohen gadol to be nichnas l'fnai l'fnim and to kodesh hakadashim in the secret of Hakadosh Baruch Hu's names, to be mala the ketores to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to be mamtik af, to get rid of anger, which is the secret of the ketores, to bring everything, all separation, all distinction back up to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, so that it could be mamtik af, the secret of what the Rambam says about ketores, that it came to alleviate a disgusting smell. And Rav Tzadok HaKohen says that Yafa Mart, even though the Rambam doesn't have Kabbalah as we understand it from the Arizal, nevertheless, his Dvarim are in Ruach HaKodesh, and this is the Kavana itself of Keteris. That Keteris is to get rid of the nasty smell in existence, to get rid of the anger, to get rid of the frustration, to get rid of the resentment that each person has in their own hearts against themselves, against their other, and against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we can be maptik our anger, we become the Adam Hashalim, we become the Tzadikei Amcha Yisrael, the Amich Kulam Tzadikim, who find comfort in the Tzadik Yisrael Olam, which is Mechubras to the Tzadiko Shel Olam, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the way to be Mechaber to Parshas Tetzaveh, to Lefnayu Lefnim, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, is to be Mamtik Kas, to get rid of anger, to learn how to deal with anger, as we're going to see in the Zohar HaKadosh. Now, anger b'derech klal is the opposite of the Nukud of a Tzadik. A Tzadik is a person who is Miyushav. A Tzadik, the meat of a Tzadik is Hisyash v'Salev. The Nukud of a Tzadik is Menuchas HaNefesh. Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Tamid, as Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, that Shivisi is Melashon Shivayon, equanimity, Bein Ba'ayil, Bein Benafak, whether I'm up, whether I'm down, all things are equal to me. Like the stories of the true tzaddikim in our generation, boiling cups of coffee can spill on them, not a flinch, not a flinch, a refinement of the self on all elements of the body and all elements of the spirit to remain unchanging in the face of all things because of the singular connection, the Chad Ketir Aktarinu to Or Ein Soif, Kavyachol. And the midah of a tzaddik is to not care. The midah of a tzaddik, and all of us are tzaddikim, is to not be bothered, is to not get bogged down by the details of the why or the what, or why people are thinking that, or what people are thinking even, but to keep the focus singularly on the main point of experience, which is connectivity to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the innermost nakuda of purpose in this moment, to find a way of uplifting this moment, to affirm it, to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light in this moment, to affirm Emunah. Tzadik be'emunah so yichya. The secret of a tzaddik is the refinement of Emunah, living a life of Emunah and shining forth with the light of Emunah. Emunah is the opposite of anger. Anger is avodah zarah. Anger is the sense that I am in charge and it's my world. And when it's my world, there's no room for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because anger b'derech klal is always a response to a person feeling that a sense of their control has been taken away from them. Any encounter in this world which forces me to contemplate the limitations of my control, which previous to this moment I assumed that I had this control, it puts me into a place of disability. It puts me into a place of wandering down that dangerous space of mind where I feel, oh my gosh, I thought I had control and now I don't have control. That opens up the gates of anxiety, which puts a person face to face with the lack of control over all things. And so anger is a response to any moment that takes control out of my hands and forces me to come face to face with the lack of my control. I'm not talking about response to a particular event that demands a certain force. That's not anger. That's a well-placed element of strength, but anger as a response is ultimately the confrontation with the loss of control. And when I lose control, the natural thing that I want to do is regain control. I want to reassert my control over existence. And the way I reassert my control over existence is by making myself louder, more important, bigger, raising my voice, making my posture stronger, making myself more severe. This cost, this self propagation, this presencing of the self, this blowing up of the chest, this breathing deep out of the nose, this anger, this rage, this enormity of the self blots out the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the more the self thinks that it's in control, the more the self feels that it's an actual, authentic, separate self, God forbid. And the more the self feels that it's an actual self, dependent self, then the more it needs to assert its own control, which is the birthplace of anger. And so the tzaddik, who's aware that everything and every moment comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, both the tzaddikim and the Rishonim, both the ability to be the tzaddik and the reality of being a rasha, it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The tzaddik who recognizes that everything comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the person who's freed from anger. It's freed from anger because I'm not in control anyway. And when something goes my way, fine, it goes my way, good. I'll do everything I can to make sure that that happens. But when something doesn't go my way, okay, it didn't go my way. I did what I could, and it's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to finish things, like Yitzchak Avinu, the shorish of the tzaddik, who's also the shorish of kas mituko, the refinement of kas. Yitzchak should have theoretically been the most angry person in the world. Instead, he was passively present in the process of people taking his things, but not a weakness, not a denial of force, but rather a recognition that this is absolutely meaningless to me in the light of the true value of all things, that there's nothing. There's nothing other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's why Yitzchak was able to laugh. Not because he was worried about himself in the present, but because he was laughing a laughter of the future. And so the tzaddik is without anger. It's the refinement of anger. It takes the notion of self and it refines it to the degree that every aspect of self is shown to just be a revelation of a Kadosh Baruch Hu itself. And so, in learning to connect ourselves to the Tzadik Yisod Olam, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Zohar Kadosh, to Moshe and Har Sinai, to the Kohen Gadol and Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Tzadik Yisod Olam in each and every person's life, Bein B'chaim, Bein above Chaim. The way to do that is to refine ourselves and to let go of anger. To be more of a tzaddik is to let go of anger, to let go of our need to be in control, because ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu is control. Ah, this person did something I didn't want. Okay, I thought it was going to go a different way. Again, it's not passivity. It's an active presentation of self that is a kivush hayetzer, a kivush hayetzer, an overcoming of the self that allows itself to pause and enter into a mindset of shivisi, of lo ichpat li klal, I don't care. Like Rabbi Nachman says, I don't care. Avad, I want to care. Avad, I care about all of those feelings and the things that this person is making me feel. But I choose to care even more about the light of not caring, which is accessible to each and every person at the fount of their selves in the aspect of the amich kulam sadikim, the refinement of anger. And so we're going to see an incredible Zohar Kadosh. And this is on Daf Kuf Pei Beis in Parshas Tetzaveh. Sorry, let me just find the place. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Pasach, and again, it's always Rabbi Yehuda, the secret of Malchus, the secret of the beginning of becoming a tzaddik, of tzaddik be'emunah yichya, the Malchus agenuza baradlo. Rabbi Yehuda Pasach, Rabbi Yehuda opens up. And opening up over here doesn't just mean he opened up his mouth, he created an opening for this idea to come down anytime any other person in history studies this idea. So quotes the pasuk from Yeshaya that remove yourself from that person who the soul is within them, for what are they worth? Haikra ukma, this teaching has already been established. Aval mai chadu lachem min ha'adam, what does it mean remove yourself? What does it mean remove yourself from that person? Is the Torah HaKadosh or the Nevi'im telling us, warning us that one individual should remove themselves from another individual, should separate themselves from another person? Uf inon nami legabe. So that would also be true in the opposite direction. That if that person is being warned not to connect to me, then I should also be warned not to connect to that person. Like we said before, in the world of Tohu, where it's just a world of separation, every thought is operating in simultaneity. One thing is responding to another without any centering agent of the Tzadik Yesod Olam that connects all of these disparate things to balance them. So of ina nami legabe. Yishtachun b'nei nasha delei ruven ilin be'ilin la'almin. What will turn out is we're going to find that we have a reality of individuals who are not encountering one another for their entirety of their existence. Elaha ukma. But we've already established, b'man de ishkim lepesach de hakreya lemeyav le shalom. But rather, it's discussing the type of person that one should say shalom to in the morning, as the Gemara in Maseches Brachos on Daf Yudalad Amud Aleph discusses. Vana ukmana le b'kra achra. And I understood this in a different way. And even though this is all good and this is the way that it's explained, what does it actually mean? That you should stay away from the person with the neshama ba'apo. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a command to individuals, a suggestion as to how we should function in this world of Israel, and he warns us. Le'istamre mi'inan b'nei nasha desatu archaihu me'oirech tav la'oirech bish. U'mesabu nafshe b'hahu mesabu afra. Here, the Torah HaKadosha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is warning us to remove ourselves and keep ourselves separate from those who have deviated away from the path of goodness, and have entered upon and embarked upon the path of negativity, and have polluted their souls with that pollution, with that external pollution. And we're going to see it's not what we think the Zohar Kadosh is talking about. The person that we're being warned to stay away from is a person with anger. When a Kadosh Baruch Hu creates an individual, avid le b'diyukne ilah, like the Tzadik, each person is a Tzadik, each person is Moshe Rabbeinu. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates us in the image of above, v'nafach be'ruchei, and He breathed the breath of life into us, kaviyachol kadisha, the kalil tlas, the holy breath of life that is composed of three things, kamad ukmin, as it's already been taught, the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, the moyach, the lev, and the kaved. The isbei, nefesh, ruach, v'neshama, the nefesh and the body, the ruach and the heart, and the neshama and the mind. U'le'elam ikula neshama, and the highest element of this is neshama, d'yu chayla ilah leminde lemitar p'kudei d'kud shabrichu. And the highest is the neshama, the breath itself, which is the capacity to know and to understand and to engage in the work of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so the pasuk is saying the neshama itself. What does it mean that this neshama has become polluted? Neshmasa kadisha ayil be'b'chulchana achrei ha'ihu me'asivle. And if this neshama goes up to a different place, if this neshama gets stuck in a different place, it becomes polluted there. V'naflik mipulchane demare, and it gets removed from the position, the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The neshama gets polluted and it gets dragged down. Begin the tlas chaylen ilin kulachad nefesh ruach v'neshama mishtatve kechada. Because in truth, the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, the naran, are in truth three elements of one thing, and they're all unified together. They're all the pnimium. They all find kalim within the self, rather than the makifim, which are the chay and the yichida. V'avichad, and they're all one. V'kula kagavna, and they're all in the secret, in the color of the secret of kagavna ilah. Hoylech es hachacham, kula kagavna deraz ila, all in the image of the ascendant secret. V'i chazinan lahai barnash tahave be'ilin dargin kula. And if we see an individual who appears to have all of these qualities, ad loy kaima b'kiyuma leminde man ihu b'mai isyada lekarvada nash bahadei oile ismane bei. And if a person sees a person who appears holy, sees a person who appears to have a fullness of self, seems to be a tzaddik on one level or another, and seems to be standing in a situated position, who is the person that a person should come and connect themselves to? What is the idea that a person should come to connect themselves to? What is the model that a person should try and model themselves after? How does one know the karve barnash bahade if a person should come close to them, oile ismane mine, or to distance themselves? And this includes the notions of that individual, the ideas of that individual, the attitudes of that individual. Sak the Zohar Kadosh. And so how can a person know who a person should connect to and who a person should distance themselves from? It's specifically in the place of anger. It's specifically in the place of anger Bekaso, bekiso, bekoso, as the Chazal tell us. It's specifically in the place of anger that we're going to come to know the ability to connect to a person or not. Because the mark of anger is the true mark of whether a person has refined themselves. Because anger is a letting go of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and a doubling down on the self, while comfort and calmness is letting go of the self and a doubling down on the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That anger stems from descending down into the thickness of this world to try and gain some stability and some sense of control, in spite of the fact that it's slipping through our hands at every moment, causing me to get angrier and angrier, to spin more and more out of control, to try and grasp so that I can know. An angry person always knows. Or to be a calm person who lives with hishtavus, who knows so deeply that it doesn't matter what happens because we already know. We already know that Eza Tov Hashem. We already know that Amich Kulam Tzadikim. We already know that Tzadik B'Emunah Yichya. The path of anger is the true sign of distinction between a good person or a person who should not be followed. Rugza Mamish. Berugsa mamish yadile barnash. V'yishtamun man ihu nishmasa kadisha nater b'shaisa derugza de lo yaker le me'asrei. That it's specifically by anger, for you see this, but if it's going to be a holy soul, nishmasa kadisha, nater b'shaisa derugze, they calm themselves down, they hold themselves in a place of anger, when anger descends upon them. De lo yaker le me'asrei. That they should not be removed from their placement. Begin the mashrei techuse hahu el zar, Dohu barnash the kayos, and they ensure that they don't move from their place so that they shouldn't be taken over by that foreign god of anger. That's the person who you should connect yourself to. Again, it's not that the tzaddik doesn't have a reason to be angry. Each person has a reason to be angry. There are moments in this world that demand a person to be frustrated. That's just the mitzias. Frustrated expectations, a sense of loss of control naturally demands that we want to assert our control, raise our voice. When we feel less control, we want to reconfirm our control. And it's not out of anger, it's not out of rage, but it emerges as anger. Kas is a way that a person expresses themselves. It's a forcing of the self into reality itself so that I become more real than I actually am because I need control. And that takes me away and that creates a void. It creates a place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not found. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't be in a place like that, where a person is trying to assert full control over themselves, the opposite of a tzaddik, the opposite of the Keturah, the opposite of Lifnayu Lifnim, that place of Chashai, that place of quiet, that place of the Shah that we spoke about, of the Rebbe Shah in the Kar and Purim, of the Mittler Rebbe Shah, before he was able to give over Torah, the calming of the mind. The Beroigi is Rachim Tiskor. It doesn't say that the tzaddik doesn't get angry. It says that the tzaddik doesn't allow the anger to push them away from their situatedness. It means that they confirm their stand, they affirm their stand in Emunah, and they're mamtik charun af besimcha, as Rabbi Nachman describes. The secret of Eretz Yisrael, arichas af, breathing deep, being mamtik charun af in that moment that simsim is kas. The rega of kas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, kaviyachol, that Bilam Harasha was able to be machavin to in order to be makal klal Yisrael, that rega ba'apo. That moment of anger, the tzaddik has the das to enter into that place and be mamtik and to realize that every single thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is for the toiv ha'amiti v'hayashar v'hatoiv. That everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is l'toiv v'tachlis l'toiv and baruch sha'amar v'haya ha'olam, and that there's ein shicha l'fni kes kodecha, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is rachamim rabim maleim kepshuta mamish, and there's no room for kas in the kodesh HaKadoshim. In that place, we're mamtik that rega, we're mamtik that af, and that anger, and there's no greater hamtaka of the tzimtzum than calming ourselves down in a moment of anger, than taking a deep breath prior to responding. A person who exhibits that attribute is a person who should be connected to. It's specifically by anger that a person is going to know who to connect to. Ihu nishmasa kadish, if it's a holy soul. Not to if he contains himself in a moment of anger. Not to be removed from his place, but in the mashrei tchoisa hahu elzar, so that that foreign god anger pushes us away from ourselves. I could think I'm one person, the next moment anger comes, and I remember that I'm an animal. Anger destabilizes the entire mensch. I remove myself from my place. Anger means that I'm not there anymore. It's ki'ilu oved of a dazar. I'm no longer in control of myself. I'm under the control of something else. I'm seeing red. It's instinctual. The Zohar Kadosh statement of not allowing anger to displace me from my place, to dislodge me from my place. Da'ihu barnash kedekayos. This is a person. This is a tzaddik. Da'ihu avda demari. This is a servant of God. Da'ihu gavar shlim. This is a whole person. Whole how? Because he recognizes that there's absolutely no need to try and grasp control. Lo chpat li klal. Kataras yismach lev avenosh. The smell is going to be removed. V'yahu barnash le'natir la. But if a person is incapable of guarding themselves, v'yu akir kedusha da iloya me'asrei le'mishrei ala isitra achra. But if a person can contain themselves in a moment of anger, person gets removed and dislodged and acts in a certain way in anger, speaks in a certain way, and they get dislodged, that's the opposite of the Nikud of a Tzadik. That's the opposite of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's the opposite of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's the opposite of a singular connectivity in the Chayim Ad Oilam. That's Misa. That's a taste of Misa. V'dai da ihu barnash demarid b'mari. This is a person who has rebelled against their creator. V'asir l'kirba b'hadil ischabri imei. You shouldn't connect to such a person. V'da ihu tayrif nafsho ba'apo. This is the secret of a person who devours their soul in their own anger. Ihu tayrif akar nafshe begin rugze. He devours his soul as a result of anger. V'ashrei gvia be'elzar. And a foreign god takes its place. V'adak siv chadvu lachem min ha'adam asher neshama ba'apo. Stay away from a person whose neshama is taken away from them as a result of their anger, whose neshama is taken away as a result of their disconnection to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that exists in that moment. And so we connect the Zohar HaKadosh now. It says that what? Should we live in a world where no people are connecting to one another? Should we live in a world of all of the riboy drashos of the Chavraya Kadisha, where all of the fancy woodwork and the footwork of the Torah HaKadosh is revealed in all of its fancy? Without the tzaddik, all of these things appear to be disparate. Without the nikud of kodesh hakadoshim, the entire mishkan and the entire beis hamikdash appears to be devoid. Without the even hashasiyah, without the nikud hapnimis of existence, the malchus agnusa baradla, without the tzaddik yisod olam that's makasher us to that. So everything appears to be separate and apart, but it's specifically with the light of the tzaddik, which is the hamtaka of kas, which is the refinement and letting go of anger, letting go of frustration, letting go of anger toward outwards, letting go of anger toward inwards, letting go of the frustration towards self, letting go of the frustration towards other, opening ourselves up to calmness, Shavis Hashem Lanagdi Tamid, the secret of Mamtik Charon Af Besimcha, the secret of the tzaddik who's able to remain steadfast in their place, even in a moment of anger, to undergo the tzimtzum and remain with a full and fundamental awareness of Or Ein Soif, Kepshuta Mamish, Kekoidim Hatzimtzum Mamish. That's what each and every person is able to do, and that's what's mechaber us to Parshas Tetzaveh, the tzav that connects the tuf to the hay. It comes right before in the Zohar Kadosh, which is the secret of chametz and matzah. Rabbi Nachman always talks about how chametz is anger, something that remains for too long, some notion that is sedimented in my mind as being so fundamentally significant to my existence, to my functioning, as if it's become an avodah zarah for me is chametz. It's something that's lasted too long, and to be mamtik the chametz of the mind, the frustration and the ease towards anger, I have to break down the ches and open it up into a hay to allow it to become a malchus, that to allow it to become a mem, which equals matzah. Because the difference between a ches and a hay is someone who feels that they're whole and someone who recognizes that they're broken. That's a gavar shalom. A tzaddik is a person who understands that they're not perfect. Tzaddik who understands that there's nothing that will ever be as perfect as a Kadosh Baruch Hu. The only thing perfect is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Everything else is imperfect. That's a Gavar Shlim. That's a person who's mamtikas. That's a person who has no reason to get angry because I didn't expect anything anyway. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is barachim rabim. Everything is b'cheinu b'chesed barachim aleinu. Al kol Yisrael, I have no claims. I have nothing. Hineni ani vidal. Person comes with nothing. Secret of David Malka Mashiach, who wasn't angry, had all the reason to be angry. Adomi Kise'er. He was red like murder. He was red like Esav, the anger, the rage, the desire to take control over everything. And he was mahapichet to the secret of gaining control without having control, which is Emunah. Emunah is what we do when we own the fact that I have no control, and the only thing I can do is trust that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has control. And Memela, the more we trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu has control, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu has control. Be'ezras Hashem.